America doesn't need a revolution, it needs a colonic. At least that's what self-proclaimed old-fashioned liberal Bill Maher told a Wall Street Journal columnist recently. The political comedian emphasized his fundamental problems with the GOP, but he also directed much of his criticism toward the left, and that's something he has done increasingly in recent years. In the interview, Maher says he takes aim at both sides because he believes humor is the best way to get to the truth.
The host of Real Time with Bill Maher doubled down when asked about targeting the left, telling the Wall Street Journal, quote, "You're damn right I do because you give me more material. I'm a comedian. I'm going to go where the gold is." Maher opened up about getting a lot of grief, even losing liberal friends over having prominent conservatives like Ann Coulter and former Trump Attorney General Bill Barr on his show. As for the second Trump term, he vowed not to repeat the same jokes from Trump's first go-round. He signaled he's looking forward to the shake-up, saying, quote, "I like America. America does not need a revolution. What it needs is a colonic. Would Trump be the man I choose first to administer it? No, but I'd like to see what he and Elon Musk are going to do."
Bill Maher is a frequent topic on this show, and I have mixed feelings about him. I don't particularly like his stance on Israel or the conflict that is going on in Gaza, for example. But this interview that he gave to the Journal is partly about him, his criticisms of the left, and those criticisms do tend to focus particularly on what he would, I think, probably call wokeism. It's never a term I particularly love, but he does, I think, have valid points about an excess there that is both electorally damaging to the Democratic Party, but also sometimes just seems to fly in the face of what most people believe. One of the people who he cited in this interview is Seth Moulton, the Democratic congressman from Massachusetts, who shortly after the election talked about the fact that Moulton, is the father of two daughters, and he doesn't really love the idea of them getting pushed around on the sports field by people who were born male and have then transitioned, and he took a whole lot of heat for that. And Maher was defending that sort of position from a more, what he sees as a more oppressively progressive left-wing view.
Yes, he has certainly picked fights with progressives on a couple of key issues that have now become major salient political battles, transgender accommodations, particularly in sports, the lunacy of that he points out. He was also very active during COVID. Again, a good, responsible citizen early on, and then calling out the overreach with respect to schools, and with respect to other aspects of COVID. Why were schools being closed when everything else was open? He's a good, he's a good liberal dissenter. Or he is a liberal, he is a Democrat, but he points the areas to which liberals have become devoted to a kind of, academic progressivism that is really toxic and disliked by a lot of the American people. And so I think he's very useful in that regard. I quite like his show. I enjoy his political views. I agree with a lot of them. I don't agree with everything he has to say. I too don't, necessarily agree with his Gaza policy and maybe some other things. But we used to have more disagreements, and now I hear him sounding more and more like a Robby libertarian on a lot of things. He does have some affection for libertarians. He has described himself that way sometimes in the past. He's very libertarian on drugs. I think maybe he's been all over the place on foreign policy. He's not a particularly hawkish person overall, but he's been very disparaging of the anti-Israel sentiment on college campuses.
Yeah, one thing that I do respect Bill Maher for, even when I disagree with him on some specifics, is I think you described him as a liberal dissenter, and I think that's very accurate, in fact, because sometimes I get a little annoyed or dispirited by people who start off on the liberal left, then sort of seem to be at least thoughtful or rigorous in the way they critique the left, but then just gradually become completely flat-out right-wing figures. And Maher hasn't really done that, and he does continue to hold mostly liberal beliefs, even though he can have that capacity to critique them. And even in this Wall Street Journal interview, he was kind of gently making fun of Republicans who think that he could maybe be brought over to their side or become a spokesperson for them. He said he's not going to join, and this is the quote, I'm not going to join your team that doesn't believe in democracy. And he's also critical of people like Marjorie Taylor Greene and Lauren Boebert, who he thinks are just, well, crazy people, basically, in his judgment.
It's difficult. I know it's difficult to be someone who agrees with the right on certain things, but agrees with, I agree with progressives on something. I'm a generally socially liberal person. I want to leave everyone alone. And to not be firmly in one camp or the other is increasingly difficult, both in our political environment and, frankly, our media environment.
Absolutely.
You are encouraged to be coded blue and defend everything Democrats are doing, Biden is doing, Kamala Harris is doing, even if that means pretending that Biden is still somehow cognitively fit for office. Or you're on the other side, you're in Team Red, you're going to defend everything Trump does, you're pro-Trump, you're going to be excusing or not talking about the things he's done that are really hard to defend, like January 6th, or outright defending it, and that's what your job is if you're Team Red. If for those of us who don't fall neatly into either category, it's increasingly very difficult to have a career in media and or politics.
It is. No,
but I am trying.
Those gravitational pulls to either extreme have definitely become stronger, I think, in recent years. I mean, it used to be that there were more dissenting voices, even on the cable news networks, whether those cable news networks leaned left or right. I think that is less so. Now, there may have been some slight resetting of that. I know you're quite a fan of Scott Jennings on CNN as someone bringing a divergent view to that network, which certainly, I think, broadly does skew liberal, if less so than MSNBC. But anyway, my fundamental point is Bill Maher is someone who is at least a bit unorthodox or is not fully signed up as a member of the blue team who will defend
and even though it is difficult because of the gravitational pull you're mentioning, I think it is more interesting for viewers to not know exactly what that you're going to hear rote talking points defending one team or the other. It's not that I don't exactly know what I think Bill Maher is going to say, because I generally understand his ideology, but he's capable of surprising you because he's not just going to say the pro-Trump thing or the pro-Democrat thing. It's a little bit more interesting and nuanced than that. I think that's an underrated positive thing in people who are commentators, that they might surprise that, I'm interested to hear what Bill Maher will say about this, because it's not just going to be pre-scripted based on what the correct thing to say is if you support Trump or if you support Biden.
It's not the reading of talking points, and we like people who don't read talking points.
Indeed. He had on the actor John Cryer over the weekend on his show, and they were talking about the election results, and Cryer said that he thought it was just a reaction to the inflation bump, Americans hating inflation, and Maher said, you keep telling yourself you'll lose the next election too.
Yeah.
It's not just inflation.
Right.
It's a big part of the story, but it's not just inflation.
No, and there's a broader critique to be made for sure.
More Rising right after this.